Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kara Button, and I'm the Game Plan Advisor for the CSI Calgary. Thank you for joining us today. Given the incredible disruption that we are experiencing due to COVID-19, CSI Calgary thought it would be a good idea to deliver some information on resiliency. We were pleasantly surprised to have over 500 people register for this webinar. The bulk of the registrants are athletes. Then we have about 25% coaches and 25% sport administrators. Of the athletes that registered, we also noticed a significant number were summer athletes. And just rest assured, we all feel for you and understand what you're going through at this difficult time. In today's session, our lead experts in mental health, in mental performance and strength and conditioning, Frank Vandenberg and Jeremiah Burnett, we'll discuss the impacts of COVID-19 on your sport and life and recommend strategies and opportunities to strengthen your mental health and mental performance, as well as ways to stay active and fit. At the end of the session, which will take approximately 45 minutes, there will be time for questions. Please type your questions into the question box and we will do our best to answer all of them at the end of that. So I'll have Frank take it from here.
Thank you, Kara. Yes, it's obvious that all our lives are now very much disrupted by the coronavirus outbreak and spreading of COVID-19. For me, at this time, as I'm speaking, I was supposed to be on an airplane on my way to the Netherlands for a surprise visit to my dad for his 75th birthday. That's obviously not happening, and I find myself doing this webinar with you. Thank you for joining. It's disruptive for everyone. It's affecting us all in family matters, in work and school environments, in our social lives, and also in sport. And most of us, if not all, we find ourselves at home with limited ability to do what we're used to do. Before I get started, I'd like to let you know that for the last week, I've been in close contact with my counterparts in the Sport Institute and Centers Network, and as a group of leads in mental performance and mental health, find ways to align our support, messages, and resources, and we continue to work on this. I also would like you to know that I've been in contact with Dr. Karen McNeil, lead mental performance consultant for Canadian Olympic Committee, joined by Peter Jensen and Penny Werthner, and Karen is also the lead mental health counselor for COC at Games and in the preparation for Games. Thank you all for collaborating together to find good ways of handling the situations from our perspective. This webinar, we can see it to be the first, but likely not the only one, type webinars or interactive engagement platforms to be delivered. I think everyone could stay tuned for more to come in days and weeks. And as we're doing this, I would like to ask you as the audience also to let us know what we can to address, offer support or different strategies in the future. So we are very much looking forward to your feedback. So in times of major disruptions or crisis, as humans, we may react and respond in very similar ways to each other, as well as in very different ways. There's definitely some similar experiences that we can relate to. We may be all very surprised that this thing is moving so fast and that there is so many changes on a daily basis. A lot of us may feel a lot of disappointment that our most favorite activity, which is sport, has come to a halt. We can't do what we love to do. Some of us may have feelings of anxiety and fear, and in the first place for catching or transmitting the virus itself. Maybe anxious about how it impacts others around you, in your team, in your family and friends. Or maybe even some anxiety about not knowing what comes next. Even guilt can be part of the picture for really being concerned about COVID-19 and maybe not so much about sport, or conversely, for being concerned about your sport journey and maybe not so much about the virus itself. So these are some really typical, different responses that we may have very similar experience in, or also differences. And those differences really lead into how really not everyone has the same exact same experiences or feelings. People may experience these feelings at different intensity levels. People may have different ways to cope and to deal with these experiences, whether it's through your own strategies and resources, or through working with others, whether it's friends and families, coaches and staff, or other professional support staff. The point to remember is that we all react and respond both similar and different from each other, and this should be considered very normal reactions and experiences to a very abnormal event. The next point of conversation or discussion is really about information. Right now, there is so much information, and there is so much information everywhere. It's easy to get overwhelmed. And I want to provide 3 cautions. From other events and crises, we know that too much media of any kind can undermine mental health. We also know that social media may escalate anxiety more than traditional media. And there's a few reasons for that. Through social media, the perception of risks may increase, even if it's unduly. The other reason maybe is that there can be a lot of misinformation. The World Health Organization yesterday is starting to talk about the infodemic. So I've already heard some examples like garlic is the cure, or Cape Breton is on lockdown, and both is not true. So when it comes to this information, I would like to share with you some strategies that you may want to consider to limit the negative effects of this. So first of all, limit the information exposure itself. In other words, go on an attention diet. You can simply choose 2 or 3 news sources that you would like to tune into, and also maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the day that you want to engage. So not to expose yourself to all this information all the time. I think it's wise to go to the right sources. These can be reliable local or national media outlets. These can be provincial, federal health authorities that you may want to be informed by. And I also would like you to know, and maybe you do know, that there is a sport medicine advisory committee consisting of physicians from COC, CPC, the COPSI network, and On the Podium, that provide a 48-hour update obviously every 2 days. And this is really good information. The fifth update came out yesterday and has been sent to all partners in sport. I encourage you to ask your own sport organization to have access to this bulletin, because it's really informative. Another strategy that I'd like you to consider is be critical, and ask yourself, do I need to know all of this information? Does all of this information really help me, or is it actually hindering me or bothering me? And the last one is, after you're watching news about this whole situation unfolding, and I hope you're not binge watching, follow up or replace it with something fun, something light, something at ease, something that makes you laugh, something that's mindless, something that is enjoyable. It could be some comedy, you can sing karaoke, you can watch American Idol, or any type of other show that is kind of a little bit more lighthearted and different. The other current situation that I'd like to kind of talk about is about social distancing, quarantine, and isolation. That's what we've been asked to do now. But I'd like you to also know what some of those effects can look like, and really be mindful about how we can mitigate some risks. Because spending days or weeks at home with limited resources, stimulation, or even social contact can take a toll. Asked to stay home will likely to cut you from your regular routines and activities on a daily basis. And sources of stress can include a drop in meaningful activities, sensory or physical stimulation, and lack of social engagement, financial strain from being unable to work, and a lack of access to typical coping strategies such as training, going to a gym, being fit, attending religious services. During a period in which we are, distancing ourselves from each other and find ourselves in isolated places, there's different experiences that we would like to acknowledge. There can be, an experience of fear and anxiety. There is a real threat for yourself and for your family member or others to contracting, the coronavirus and becoming sick or spreading it to others. But it can also be about concerns that, about obtaining food or personal supplies, taking time off from work or training, or fulfilling family care support. And all these situations can lead to some worries, some levels of anxiety, difficulties with sleep, or focusing on daily tasks. I just want you to be mindful of that. Away from work or training and other activities, it interrupts our normal daily routines and may result in feelings of sadness or low moods. And also, if suddenly we find ourselves in extended periods of time, an abundance of time, that we now start to think about how we start filling that, and to kind of counteract the feelings of boredom and loneliness. It's really difficult for us in isolated areas or places that we have a loss of agency and control about what we normally do in a very, very healthy and free way. And then we can feel frustrated or even feel angry about this, even feel anger and resentment towards those who put us in this situation. Or even, if you feel that you're exposed to the virus, you may feel anger and resentment to someone's negligence, for example. And the last important piece that I'd like to say is that if we are catching a virus, if we are getting sick or have been exposed to someone who has COVID-19, we actually may find ourselves in a stigmatized place by others who feel they will contract the illness if they interact with you. So these are all realities that we'd like to be knowledgeable about. I also would like to say, and this is not to scare anyone, but just to inform everyone, is that there's definitely some vulnerable populations out there, and these are people with pre-existing mental health conditions, not to mention the healthcare workers helping with the response to the coronavirus, as well as people with disabilities who require specific diets, medical supply, or assistance from caregivers or other accommodation. So therefore, we have put together this webinar to really, provide some messaging about what we can do, how we can act, what we can explore to help ourselves and each other. And we've kind of, grouped it around themes like, uncertainty, tolerating uncertainty, how we manage ourselves in our care, how we actually can use this moment to actually start, keep building resilience and to keep and maintain a level of fitness. So as these are very upsetting and uncertain times, we are told to stay home, to isolate and keep a social distance. The questions that may arise when it comes to the uncertainty of this is, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? How are my friends and my family doing? How are they coping? When it comes to sport, we are facing the reality of the cancellation and postponement of competitions and training. And questions that may arise is, what does this all mean? Does my Olympic journey come to an end or a temporary halt? How is that going to work? How do I get back in shape and form? Or what is the next deadline that I need to make or meet for continuing in my sport? These are all real questions that are happening, and just speaking to the level of uncertainty that we all feel. I can tell you that uncertainty generally doesn't work very well for most people. Often we are seeking clarity and certainty. We typically work better with this. But as we're seeking clarity and certainty in this time of uncertainty, it may also backfire, because we can hinder ourselves by overdoing it, by possibly leading to more worries, more anxiety, and such. So at this point, I'd like to maybe point out a few things that you can do to help increase tolerance for the uncertainty that is kind of that is all around us. First of all, I'd like you to kind of think about how you would ease back on those typical certainty-seeking behaviors, changing some of those bad habits. So, for example, not checking your phone all the time for the latest news, not talking about the various options all the time, because you're getting yourself in this kind of downward spiral about not being able to think or do about anything else anymore. So there are times where you can actually seek clarity, and those are, with the news outlets as well as with your own sport organizations. And then there is times that you may want to actually step away. Something else that you may find yourself familiar with is, control for what you can control. Identify what you have done in the past in times that were kind of different, uncertain, challenging. You've been competing in, bad weather conditions. You've had challenges in sport before, and then how do you get back on the bandwagon to help yourself in what you can do and what you can do well? So identify what you can control in these areas, and then work with that. Rehearse and practice it. That is a really good way of thinking. The other thing is really about starting to think about alternative plans. You probably have an abundance of time, so you need to start filling your time with different things in daily life, possibly also in training. And so what this does is you put more control in how you manage on a daily basis, rather than being kind of more passive and reactive to what is happening to you. And also think about how you usually cope well. What are the ways that work well for you in times of difficulty and challenge? Some people like to get together and find support in each other, listen and share stories. Other people like to kind of make lists and start really thinking about what you can do proactively to make change. Think about what these different coping strategies, how these different coping strategies can help you that have been successful for you in the past. That brings me also to the next point about how you would take care of yourself, because that is obviously, imminent and important for athletes, high performance athletes anyway, but definitely in these times, it's really, really important to have those strategies in place. So, for example, I've already said about, taking breaks and limit exposure to the information that is surrounding the spread of coronavirus and COVID-19. Be wise with that information. Another part is acknowledge and accept your feelings and emotions. They may not be comfortable. They may not be what you like. They may not be what is best, but they are part of your reality right now. And to acknowledge them as such and to accept them as such goes a long way. There are going to be ways in which you can see and feel differences, but it's okay to not know answers or to not feel the best that you can be. Some of you have been exposed to practices like meditation or mindfulness practice. These are excellent forms of being less judgmental about what you think, what you feel, and how you do it. More kind of, looking at the reality as it is and accepting that to move on with. I'm sure there's going to be more about these types of strategies to do in the future, including resources that we'll all make available. The other point that I want to mention is that in these times of uncertainty and stress and disruption, our nervous systems may be out of whack a little bit, maybe off balance. We may, feel that stress response. We may feel that anxiety creeping up, and that means that we're, our nervous system is kind of acting up a little bit. So we want to counter that for ourselves also in very, tried and true and adaptive ways. Find your sleep, regular exercise, always good to wear off some of the kind of the emotional energy and concern. mindfulness practice, spend time in nature. It's very, very healthy, likely very enjoyable as well. And employ different relaxation techniques to actually counteract some of that nerve-wracking, more stressful response that we're all maybe feeling. What's really important also in what we can do for ourselves is make time to explore other interests and activities. This is the time to actually spend time on different aspects in your life. You know, you can take up a course, you can pick up a language, you can start, become a better cook. You can do all kinds of things that keep you occupied in very healthy and adaptive ways. And as we're trying to kind of maybe find new ways to fill our daily and weekly routines, maybe these other activities will, are a very important, part of that daily schedule. You are likely very used to very scheduled and routines throughout the day and throughout the week. And so I think you have a task to kind of revisit this and start new routines based on what you can do in the current situation. And as you're paying attention to these daily and weekly routines, that includes self-care, nutrition, training, exercise, other activities, social engagement, any of that, it really helps us to preserve order and purpose in our lives. And it gives us really some direction about what works for us well. The other last thing that I would like to say is it's always good to express your experiences, thoughts, and feelings. And you can do this by yourself. You can write it in a journal. You can talk it over with others. It's really, really healthy to have some of that conversation going. It can be about the experiences, about what you're going through as you're self-isolating, or training in isolation, or around coronavirus and COVID-19. It can also be about other areas in life, or things that you want to talk about. So moving on from self-care to kind of really building resilience. This is a very interesting way of thinking about how we can actually address or manage the challenge. Is that resiliency may not be only something that comes to you at bad times. That you're bouncing back from a failure or mistake. That you're finding a way to work out of misery or adversity. Yes, those are all very, very resilient moments. But you can also see resilience much more as a preventative and proactive way of helping yourself. Basically, creating a buffer and helping your own mindset, and with social support and with your own kind of attributes and characteristics to be more resilient and become more resilient through this process. And as you're doing this in sport, as you're doing this in competition, as you're doing this in training, you may also want to think about, how can I do this under the current circumstances? So we know, for example, that when you're exposed to new situations and realities, we can actually learn from it a lot. We can actually, think about, how do we react to these new realities and these challenging situations? Learning more about learning more about ourselves, and also how we can recover and how we can get through, some of these challenges. And I'm sure that you will be doing a lot of improvisation today and in the next few days and in the next few weeks. You do new things, you start to adapt, you start to flex, you empower yourself. And as you're learning how you do it here, right now, in this really interesting and challenging situation, think about how it can actually help you and serve you in the future when you're facing other challenges. And through all of this, I think it's really, really helpful to find new perspective, or maybe a different perspective to look at it, and to really reframe some of the hardship and challenges into what opportunity it can be and become. And that is, that really keeps you kind of active. That keeps you on the top of your feet. You have something to look forward, and maybe you can actually better and wiser through it. Again, I think that this whole area of how to build resilience and what we can do can be one of those major topics that we can explore in weeks to come. Now, I want to finish with something that I have been that has been shared by one of my colleagues. It's coming from Marnie McBean, chef de mission for Team Canada at Tokyo Olympics. Success comes amid chaos, much as it comes through planning and preparation. The global reaction to COVID-19 will be requiring changes from all of us. Roll with it, talk to your team, anticipate possible situations, and change as needed. I want to finish up with kind of last few messages. First of all, we are in this together and we can help each other. And we can do this in very, very different ways. I think one way to be thinking about is that we can offer each other practical support. That is what we need to do in our communities, with our neighbors, with our teammates, in our teams, is how can we help each other in very practical ways. That goes a long way. The simplest example would be is if you're together with several teammates or people, you know, one person goes to the grocery store to get some supplies and not all three. That's a very simple way of how we can help each other in different ways. Maybe more importantly is how we can provide support to each other. I call it peer support. You as athletes, you as teammates, you as coaches, find each other. You know, find each other on a fireside chat for a coffee over FaceTime. Connect on a social level. Talk about business, but talk about how you may be doing well under the circumstances, and in that way be a real strong role model for each other, so everyone can kind of, you know, piggyback on each other's great work. And obviously there's other people that you may want to connect with more on a professional level if you so desire. Your own mental performance consultant, your own sports science and IST champions. And on the next slide there's actually a resource guide for Canadian national team athlete mental health, about what to do, where to go. You can see that there is a bit of information about who you can connect with, who you can call, even if if it's a crisis, if it's non-urgent, and based on the contacts and the relationships that you have. So I understand from the preparation in this webinar that we'll make this particular one-pager available to all the attendants somehow, likely through an email following this webinar. You know, at this time, I'd like to make a pause. I need to be inventive. I can't be, you know, celebrating my dad's birthday. So what we're gonna do in my family is we're gonna bake apple tarts in 4 different locations. Something that usually my mom does and probably is the best in the world. And now we're going to make 4 in 4 different locations, and we're going to eat this apple tart with whipped cream and coffee and sing happy birthday over FaceTime. And so that's how I manage. I hope all of this information is really good for you. I look forward to your questions. And meanwhile, you know, stay strong, stay healthy, and stay engaged. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Frank. You highlighted a lot in terms of tools and suggestions that I think a lot of people can take to heart. The apple tarts sound delicious, so maybe that's something you'll have to share with me from a recipe standpoint. Just to piggyback on a lot of what Frank has highlighted here, ultimately what I want to do is highlight some of the physical component. Now, obviously, there's a wide range of athletes and coaches and NSOs online, so I'm going to try to tailor this to everybody. Now, the bigger global pieces that I'm going to highlight is being able to create a routine and a schedule, building out a program, focusing on your gaps, being supportive and being a team member, and then ultimately trying something new. So whether you're preparing for your first World Cup, or World Championships, and Olympic Games, it's really important that you create a routine. In these uncertain times, it's really key that we look at creating a routine. Right down to creating consistent sleep schedules. Trying to go to bed and waking up at normal times is really important and can help provide you with some confidence and some level of certainty. Alongside that is creating specific workout times. If all of a sudden you're a summer sport athlete who's preparing for the Olympics, doing dryland or gym times can be really helpful in terms of creating ease within your mind. It's really important that you connect with family and friends and teammates. This can be incredibly simple in terms of whether you're in self-isolation or you're practicing appropriate social distancing, is that you can have coffee dates or tea dates with teammates to stay connected. You can actually throw on a video camera while you're working out so that it's actually like working out with one another. But I think one of the big pieces that's associated with all of this is taking opportunities to learn. You can become a better athlete, you can become a better coach, a better member of an IST staff by actually reflecting on certain things that may have gone really well in a season, things that may need to be improved. Now, part of being physically active also gives you the ability to unplug. Right now, we're so inundated with social media and news updates, and staying informed is incredibly important. But I think alongside that is it's also really, really important to, take some time away, throw in some music, go outside, do a workout with some really, really good music, and allow yourself to unplug from what is a lot of information. So now I'm going to highlight some of the pieces around building out a program. And what I think is really important here is that I want you to contact your S&C staff or your other paramedical staff, because they can really help you with some of the finer details. But I think Albert Einstein actually highlights this really well. I believe that a simple and unassuming manner of life is best for everyone, best for both the body and mind. Now, obviously, based on the complexity and the evolution of COVID-19, we can actually really set each one of you up for success by some really simple pieces. So when we're designing programs, things that can change or that can be really simple are around reps and sets and tempo and rest. Sometimes the basics can be incredibly easy and can give you some degree of variation. Alongside that is that you don't need a large space. If you have one, great. You also don't need a large amount of equipment. So far in the last few days, I've tried to contact as many of my athletes as possible to find out what they have. Some athletes have spin bikes, full gym set up, whereas others will have a Swiss ball, some elastics, and some rollers and mobility balls, and that's completely okay. We've got to be able to be dynamic in these times. So alongside that is we want to be creative. Some of those pieces can go alongside of using milk jugs, filling up 4-liter milk jugs with water that can act as dumbbells, or filling a backpack full of books. The other pieces is that you can use furniture around your house in terms of an ottoman or the stairs to be able to help create something that's a little bit different. Now, alongside that is everybody's going to have a different setup, so I think that's where it's important that you're touching base with all of your staff. Working outside right now, depending on the weather, can be really, really advantageous. Whether it's going for a walk, whether it's going for a run or a bike, you can be and practice appropriate self-distancing outside by working out. And data has shown that illness with appropriate social distancing outside can be minimal. The other piece is that do simple exercises, do simple warm-up drills, do certain mobility exercises. All of these things can build into a program that can actually really target what you might want to get out of. So my next point, focusing on your gaps. Now, depending on what you're trying to focus on, these can be these little nagging injuries that maybe you've been working on for a long period of time, whether you've had shoulder issues or hip issues or knee issues. This is a great opportunity to work on those daily essentials that maybe your therapist have given you or your strength and conditioning coach has given you. Take the opportunity now. There is no better time to work on this than the present. So these are really, really simple that can be done over and over. My next point, be a team player. Look at your support network. I think little fitness. So first off, communicate with your coaching staff, communicate with your paramedical staff, look for support and engage one another. This is extremely important in these times, and you can actually learn a lot about yourself and a lot about the team that you have around you. One of the things that I'm going to suggest right now is that you actually create little mini challenges either for yourself or within your team. This could be doing the most amount of push-ups or squats in 30 seconds, or doing a maximum number of chin-ups. These little types of exercises can actually create some camaraderie amongst your team and can give you something to really focus on. The next one that I want to highlight is just trying something new. Now, in these times, this can be something as simple as trying yoga. There are so many different types of yoga and so many different YouTube channels. This can be a great opportunity to try that out. Meditation. Now, I know Frank has highlighted this with some of his tools and suggestions. Learning how to meditate can help ease the mind and also the body. Next one is learning how to. I know Frank highlighted this before, but there are so many different mediums right now in terms of online courses that are free. It gives you the opportunity to learn how to play an instrument if you have an instrument at home, learning how to cook. All of these different things can make you a better athlete and give you more tools for down the road. The last one that I think is really important is gives you the opportunity to read. I know that whether you're an athlete, a coach, a member of an NSO, learning how to read and looking at opportunities, this can actually be really, really good in terms of addressing gaps that maybe you've had in the past, or you want different ideas from different authors. So take those opportunities. So this time I wanted to thank everybody for joining, and I'm going to pass this over to Kara.
Thank you, Jer, and thank you, Frank. You both presented us with a lot of good food for thought there and initiatives that we can all take. So I am going to go through some of the questions that we've received. So the first one I have is for Frank. Everyone talks about how sleep is important, but when I go to bed, my mind still races. What should I be doing?
That's a really good question, and actually that is not a question that I haven't heard before this coronavirus outbreak. I hear that before as well. I would say, obviously, some really good sleep hygiene and habits. You can understand it's no use to watch CNN for 2 hours before you go to bed and then expect that your mind is not turning upside down. So turn off that type of information, turn off the blue screens and social media before you go to bed. Find yourself a routine to actually, ease yourself into bed. Do some other activities that help in that. Reading could be one of them, or even meditation or listening to sounds or music, all kinds of practices that would maybe help ease. There's a number of relaxation exercises that we can apply. We can use a bit of progressive muscle relaxation or some various slow rhythmic breathing techniques that will help kind of ease the body and the mind. What is really nice about those types of techniques is that we're focusing on those sensations and not necessarily what else is happening. So that really helps in that getting to bed, getting to kind of sleep. On a personal level, something I do when my mind is racing, I start playing golf in my mind, and by hole number 6, I'm kind of asleep. So that just tells you that there's different ways to kind of engage yourself with other neutral or less disturbing or less worrying type of situations or environments or activities that would help ease the mind a bit.
Good answer. So I have another one for you, Frank. I'm trying to catch up on all the Netflix series that I never get to see. Is this acceptable?
Well, if you spread it out over like 4 weeks, I don't see any problem with that. I think when you're putting yourself in a lazy chair and you don't do anything else, and that takes up half your day, that's probably not necessarily the routine that's going to help you, as an athlete or even as a person. So I'm not going to say that you can't watch your favorite show, but if you have time, then spread it out over days and just watch one series, one episode every day, and make that part of your daily routine. But your daily routine also consists of other activities that both me and Jer have highlighted before.
Okay, thank you, Jer. I live in a tiny apartment with no access to workout equipment. How am I supposed to stay fit?
This is where you need to be creative. You don't need a large space to be able to stay fit, whether it be body weight exercises, whether it's about getting outside. Right now, it's going to be about being a little bit creative and working with your staff as much as possible to figure out what you need to do to be able to accomplish where you're at. For some of the winter sport athletes right now, they might be in a recovery, where some of our summer sport athletes are really needing to focus in on some of their bigger goals. So I think that's where rely on your staff, communicate with them what you have, and really build a plan around that so that you're feeling confident.
Thank you. Frank, this one's for you. I'm bored. I'm used to a very strict routine, and now none of that applies. Even if I eat, sleep, and exercise, I still have hours in the day to kill. What should I do?
Yeah, so the need for routine is right there. And obviously in the current situation, it is very different because some of the regular activities are not happening anymore, and you can't go to the gym or you can't go to the appointments anymore that you kind of used to kind of not only fill your time, obviously you're doing it on purpose and effectively, but now you have this extra time, and this is where the recommendation comes in to indeed explore what other interests you have and actually pick up that instrument, or just tell yourself, I'm going to get into the Italian language once once the coronavirus has left the country. I want to speak with those Italians. And so that gives you something to do on a daily basis, keeps you occupied. Maybe you can sign up for a course, or maybe cooking is the way to do it, or there's so many different things that you can explore. Think about what interested you when you were younger. Maybe some of those early interests have maybe faded, but maybe there's a great opportunity to pick back up on that. So, as JR is also alluding to, be creative, find different ways. If you don't know, then ask those questions to some people around you, your teammates, or your NPC, or even your coach. What can I do, or what can I do to fill my time a little different? So my suggestion is be proactive and find one or two things that you can start including in your daily routine or weekly routine.
Jara, I have a question for you now. This athlete is saying, I find it difficult to modify my diet regime as I'm going to be indoors more. How much is it recommended to cut back or modify, since training conditions won't be the same?
Great question. I think right now, one, if you have a nutritionist that's within your IST, please reach out to them, because that's definitely going to give you the best information with for more detail than I'm about to explain. But I think from a global standpoint, it's really important to understand the energy in and energy out. And depending on the detail at which you create a program and you create this routine, that's going to give you a much better idea of how much food you should be consuming or how much you should be taking back. So it kind of depends on the schedule that you create with your staff, but ultimately understand that if you're doing less activity, maybe that's similar to a normal recovery day that you've done in the past. Or maybe if all of a sudden you're doing 2 sessions a day, maybe you need to fuel more accordingly. I think that's where rely on the support staff that you have around you, and kind of expand on what that might look like.
Perfect. Well, here's another one that might be a little bit tougher. What about athletes like swimmers, divers, water polo players who are without a pool? It's one thing to stay fit by jogging, etc., but how do wet athletes reproduce their water activities? And the bathtub is not the answer.
Oh, bathtub is not the answer, and I guess shower won't work as well. I think this is going to be a challenging one to overcome. Right now, this is maybe where you start looking at how are you addressing just acquiring the same level of volume of training that you might be doing, so that when you do get back to that sport in terms of in the water, that you're really prepared to handle that. So this might be the opportunity where you are running, or you're on a bike, or you're doing other type pieces. That's a challenge for sure, that you're going to have to rely on your staff to come up with creative ways to go about that. So yeah, I think right now, work on ways that allow you to be prepared as best as possible to handle that of a prepare versus protect model. Prepare your body as best as possible so that when you're able to do your sport, you're ready to go.
Thank you. Apparently Frank's been getting several questions directly, so he's going to take the mic right now for a minute.
Yeah, all right. I got some questions coming in directly, and I think two of them are kind of similar. One is, what about athletes like swimmers, divers, water polo players who are without a pool? It's one thing to stay fit by jogging, etc., but how do wet athletes reproduce their water activities? And the next one is kind of similar. I can be creative with my fitness workouts, but my worry is practicing my skill set for my sport. What can I do when I don't have the space and resources to focus on that part of my training? Yeah, that's challenging. If you can't be in the pool, you can't actually do your sport. You don't have the space and the resources, even the gym that you need to actually do your technical training and to practice. That's tough. So my reply to that is kind of twofold. What are exercises that simulate what you do in technical training? So I leave that to the coaches and the trainers, because that's not my area of expertise. But are there aspects in movement and movement generation in training and that can help simulate that? But on the other end is more kind of the mental performance skill of imagery and visualization that you may now have to kind of attend, or you may now want to attend to. I know it's not the same, but it comes pretty close. So if you're actually visualizing or imagining, your sport, your movement, as real as it gets, you're using very similar, parts of your brain and your neuromuscular system to kind of, have that sensation a little bit. And I know you may want to push your performance in training usually, but I would go back and say, okay, what were the last things that I was training? What were my best performances? Can I reproduce those? Can I keep my my level of technical training and execution up as much as I can, even through the mental practice of imagery and visualization? And on that note, I think most athletes are quite familiar with that in their own sport, but I would argue that you may actually want to talk to your sports psychologist or mental performance consultant in having some guidance about how you can make this work well, or how you can make this work better under the circumstances. And again, putting it back into your kind of daily routine. If you think that this is valuable, then make it part of your daily practice. And after you've done your, physical workout, your stretching, your cool down, why not spend 10, 15, however long you want on quality practice in imagery and visualization? That's an answer that I can offer you right there.
Thank you, Frank. So at this point, I'm not seeing any further questions, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you got some valuable information from this session. We did receive some praise in the comment section, so thank you for those of you that took the time to let us know that you appreciated the information that was shared. We do hope to deliver other webinars in the next few weeks, so if there are any topics you would like us to cover, you see my email address here. You can reach out and let me know, and we'll do our best to make that happen. I'd like to reiterate how important it is for all of us to stay connected at this time and support each other. It's been emphasized over and over again, but the sport community has always been good that way. Let's set an example for others to follow and emulate. We have a great group of game plan advisors across the country, mental performance consultants, sports psychologists. They're all ready and willing to help should you need it. You just have to reach out. So information can be found on the Game Plan website, mygameplan.ca. You can also find a lot of information by following us on Instagram, Game Plan Canada. And again, like I mentioned, reaching out to your advisor, reaching out to your IST support team. There's tons of people there and ready to help one another. So with that, we'll end our session. Thank you all for joining and have a great rest of your day.